Welcome to the podcast, everybody. This is All Hustle, No Luck, and we are sitting down today with an amazing entrepreneur. I'm really excited to hear about his story and what he's up to today. So, Nigel, go ahead and introduce yourself. Let everybody know what your current project is, and then we'll jump in.
Yes, hello everyone. My name's Nigel Henry. My company's called Mastery Unleashed, and we develop tools, distinctions, and practices that activates people to deliver amazing performance in their business and their personal life. And I've been doing that. I started in 2000 after being in technology for 10 years or 15 years. And then I basically decided I wanted to help people. And now I'm focused on entrepreneurs who are using their business as a vehicle to make a massive impact in the world. So that's my little intro.
Great. So you were in the technologies industry before. What kind of made that transition for you? Was there like a moment that was just like you had to do it? You had to do something different?
It happened at the end of Y2K. Do you remember the big bug?
I do.
Was going to shut down the world. And I was working on a big project for GE Capital. And we basically solved the bug, and it was amazing, best performance ever. And they were so pleased by my performance, they wanted to hire me for their Six Sigma, engagements. And at that time, I kind of just started my little spiritual practices. Well, I've been doing it, but it was getting more significant. And literally, I heard a voice say, "Nigel, congratulations, you've fixed the bug in the computer. Now go and fix the bug in the humans." I'm like, oh, okay. And I said yes because I was interested in helping people. And I was, even in technology, I was migrating towards the people side more than the raw tech side. So it was a natural switch over. But basically, I didn't know what I was getting into. I just thought, well, I'm sure if we could debug humans, we would discover something, and literally discovered that humans are high performance beings, but they're being limited or held back by this weird bug that's interfering with their performance.
Wow.
Yes, that was an answer to a call.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So when you heard this and you knew that this was the direction you were going to go, was it just like full steam ahead, or was it scary, or what was that like?
At the time, I didn't just end my technology work. I was still doing consulting, and so I was already an independent contractor. So I still had sort of one foot in the tech world and this other foot exploring the people side of things. And this is back in 2000. I think the word coaching had not yet emerged, but I didn't even know about it. I was just thinking, okay, I really want to discover. I liked people, and I knew that we could do a lot more. So it was full steam ahead in terms of exploring. I was basically investigating for the first year. And I was sustaining myself by doing consulting work in technology. But the two were merging, like they merged in the area of project management. And, I started working with leaders in organizations that were the head of IT, and they were dealing with people from around the world, lots of people from India and different kind of things. And it became more of a human issue than it was a tech issue. The tech part was easy. So for me, it was a natural transition. Well, it was a gradual transition, but a natural acceptance of the calling, because I was very interested in people. I was becoming more interested in people than I was in the technology.
Interesting.
It was a passion calling. Yeah.
So you were developing this all along, working with clients on the consulting side and everything. And when did you start to feel like you really had something here? At what point, how far in were you before you started to really, really feel it?
About 4 or 5 months in, when somebody actually paid me money And because at the time it was like experiment. I was really helping and volunteering and doing charity and community work, but just so I could help people because I didn't really need the money. I was in the .com sort of bubble, and it paid me already. So I wasn't really doing it for the money until someone actually paid me and said, "Wow, I want to pay you for this work." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And that's business. Okay. And then I had to decide what it was. I didn't actually know what it was when I started. It was just, let's do this and help people. And then I really found that the more I talked to people and the more I engaged with them is the more it became a real business or a real service that people would invest. So, but I didn't really take it seriously for a while. But I did set up a consulting firm and extended it to, I didn't know what to call it, but it became, somebody said it was coaching, but because I had all this project management stuff throwing in there, so it wasn't clear to me but I was accumulating a curriculum. That's literally what was happening. As I was fixing things and helping people, I started documenting what I was doing, and I noticed that I had a methodology which was emerging, and so I kept on pushing the envelope until I actually had, within about 3 years, I had a full-blown methodology for creating high performance. And then something happened. I think it was there was a .com crash as well as a 2008, the real crash happened. But my technology business crashed. And I said, well, this thing had better pay. And that's when the real hustle started. Because now I had to learn about marketing, which you don't learn when you're a techie. You don't have to do any marketing. You just contracts, And literally how I started marketing is I realized helping onesies and twosies wasn't going to help me. And I needed to find a way of really getting out there. So I actually started doing public speaking. And I literally went to the chambers and then I was speaking at the Rotary Club. And while at the Rotary Club, the big one in the Bay Area, someone said, you're speaking at the wrong place. You need to speak at the chambers. So I spoke at the chamber, and then Microsoft picked me up. They're like, wow, you'd be a great fit for our rollout of Office something. And they already had a keynote speaker, and they just said, well, we'll just bring you on for 15 minutes. And, you can come on just before our main speaker. So I came on and did my talk. And mine is is a very interactive scenario. What I do involves the customer being active, not listening to information, but just engaging. And so when I was done, the audience got up and cheered. And then the lady that speak after me, she just kept on referring to whatever I had done before. She's like, well, as Nigel said, and so the host just said, well, if you're referring to Nigel, we're just going to get rid of you. So they got rid of and chose me as their touring. So that's how it launched. And then as soon as you do public speaking, it's just snowballs. So you speak in one place, somebody hears you, and they want to speak here. So literally after a while, I started speaking around the country and, then getting assignments with government agencies and lots of associations where they really could see that their people needed to operate on a whole different level. So that's when it really took off, is when the speaking was added. And so, that was from around 2005 to 2008. Then 2008, the crash happened. And, that was like, it took me down. And I think the word is pivot. I had to do some serious rethinking about what I was doing, who I was serving. The whole economy was down. I lost a lot of real estate and assets. And I have to confess, I was shaken by that 2008 thing. mainly because a lot of the customers that were paying for having conferences, and they all canceled for a couple of years. So there was a kind of retreat happening. And then I had to really learn about business. And I would say the area that I didn't know well enough was marketing itself, literally. Even though I was doing it naturally, I never really studied it and applied myself to, like, what happens when things are down? What do you do when, that's when you really know, like great entrepreneurs, when things crash, how well do they bounce back? And I was weak in the area of marketing, so it took me down 2010, 8, 9, 10. I was sort of under the radar. And then in the industry of personal development, a lot of new people like Brendan Burchard and Frank Kern, all these internet marketers suddenly just blew up. And they sort of paved the way for how you could actually grow any kind of business, really, but leveraging the online scenario. So that was what sort of gave me new hope and new life, because now there's a new way of marketing where you're taking advantage of social media and internet marketing. That term came out of nowhere. And, Google, social media, all these kind of things, you had to just learn. And fortunately for me, it's technology again. So now technology is marketing.
So you're in this total transformation phase. So,
Yes.
you're forced out of the tech industry. You're developing all these new skills that you're sort of basically forced to do, sink or swim.
Yes.
And is there a moment in all of this where you feel a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with the feeling of falseness? Did you ever have that moment where you just think to yourself, what am I doing? What am I doing? Who am I trying to be, and how am I really going to be that person? Or was it not like that for you?
If I was to describe that period, it's a period of self-doubt where you're questioning, did you make the right decision? Especially when I would say just after 2008, 2010, that whole down period where the economy was down and I couldn't see a way out. I couldn't see. So I was questioning, at least when I had a job, had technology, if I was still consulting, I'd just go and code, So there was this questioning, did I make the right move? Was it a sensible move to go out on my own? What was I really thinking? So yes, there was a huge period of doubt where I was almost beating myself up for putting myself at risk, And then the other thing is, because of the work I was doing, I was inventing it, so to speak, right? So most people didn't understand it. And as I said, marketing wasn't my strongest point, so I didn't know how to position it and put it in layman's term. So where I was going through this isolation period was that no family member knew what I was doing or why I was doing it. Wow. And the only thing they understood was, why don't you get a job? You should get a job. I'm like, no, never. Right? Right. So then there was this willpower and stubbornness, like, I cannot go. This thing has to work out. And I think at the time I didn't have a mentor. So that's one thing I would say. If you're operating without a mentor or someone who's been through the trenches, you can be in the wilderness for a long time. So, but I knew that the thing that kept me going is that the calling, the initial, when I began, it was so clear, this is the future. And then now I'm in the wilderness. I'm like, oh, I'm totally lost. Why am I here? The only thing I know is I cannot quit. And I'm moving forward. And I'm glad I did, because that period of doubt, uncertainty, loneliness, isolation is actually where the growth happens. This is where when someone says you're seasoned, you've been through the trenches. Right. you know?
Right.
And so now I meet a lot of people and I can tell they're just at the beginning of the journey. They haven't been through the valley yet. And you're like, okay, I'll be there. You're there. So I think it's a necessary phase that we have to go through is to
Mm.
go through the valley. I think it's that period where you melt down all the old way of being, where you had your backup plan. Well, I could always get a job. That has to be dissolved so that you have to burn your bridges in that valley and just commit
Right.
to move forward. I remember a lot of people that I started out with, when I checked in, they'd all quit and gone back to get a job. And I'm thinking,
Really?
oh, yeah, I mean, it was a tough times. Uh, so that's another pressure, you know, when people around you are quitting and
Mm-hmm.
you didn't think of quitting, but if everyone's doing it, you question, that doubt factor. So I'd say that if there's something that should maintain is a way of holding in onto your belief, not allowing doubt to come in, because once it comes in, it's like cancer. It just keeps eating away, and once it gets to your core, you lose your drive. But as long as you
Mm-hmm.
fight it and hold on to a vision, which I had a vision at the beginning, I still have that vision, and I'm okay when I don't see the path, but I know the end is certain. I just looking for a way to discover the path. And what I also learned during that phase is that connect with others, find your community, find tribes, find people who you can talk to who are in the same boat, industry. Avoid isolation. That would be the killer.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
because I was from my background, we are often in a lab developing something. That developer mindset. You're in a lab working on something, and you're thinking in front of the computer screen is not healthy. Spend too much time there. You need to get out and go to conferences, go to industry, and meet people and get your mind stimulated. The person on the stage usually has a word for you. So that's what I would recommend for just keep going, especially during those periods.
Sure. So you're in this, you're pushing your way through. We hear a lot of entrepreneurs talk about those times of doubt, and the money's running low, they're living on savings, they're working at coffee shop, whatever they got to do. And
Yes.
you sort of pushed your way through it at that point.
Yes.
When you started to push your way through, what was the thing that you bring now to your clients and to your mentorship? Was there a one thing, do you feel, or is it the process that they have to go through themselves?
The way I look at it is I was on a quest that basically assumes that human beings are great, high performance, they're able to work magic and miracles, and they were built right. So when I was going through all of this stuff, every negative thing that happened to me became an investigation. Like, what is this for? Why is this supposed to happen? Are you supposed to feel this negative emotion? You're supposed to feel sad, feel doubt. And I spent a lot of time in the sort of meditative state while I was in the hole. And the result of that was that everything is a gift. Literally, that was the outcome of it all. Every experience is a gift, and if you can find the gift in it, then you can use it. So out of my wilderness experience, I wrote a book while I was in there. I went into deep depression, and in depression, I actually found the gift of anger, the gift of sadness, the gift of guilt, the gift of jealousy. All the negative emotions turn out to have a positive value in terms of performance. Then I also was able to look at all the work I had done before, and like in that questioning period, like, did I do it wrong? It's like I'm in a lab and I was able to see patterns that were now available. And one of the things that I discovered is that questions are important, but there's a hierarchy of questions. So most people, when they're in a tough situation, the question they're asking is, how do I get out of this? How do we fix this? How? You know, that how-to questions. And it's this question itself, that question is very stressful on the mind. And what I discovered is a better question, a type of question to ask is who? The who question gets you out of jail really fast. And so I started applying it to myself. And that's when things started turning around exponentially. I'm like, wow. And so in that low state, I discovered some stuff. And I don't know if people do that, but that's what happened to me. And that's when I found like the diamonds in the dirt, if you like. Yeah. And then I applied it to me, and now that's what I'm using for my clients. It's like, oh, the meltdown is the rebuild. You know, it's the rebuild. After the meltdown, the rebuild. And in the rebuild, you put the thing back together the way it's supposed to work. So that's what happened to me. I found that to get out, I had to rebuild myself. And I built a better version of myself than I had before, which leveraged everything. And so that became my offering to people. And then I also learned that you can have the best thing, but you have to learn how to market. So that's where, you see, so I'm like the scientist that discovered something. Eureka, I found a solution. We don't understand what you're saying, Nigel. I can, can you create a web page? So I'm a techie, right? I'll create a technical web page. And they're like, well, it's not pretty. It doesn't attract. Oh, what the hell? So that's the thing. So I have these solutions, technology stuff, human stuff, but now I have to learn how to communicate to the masses that don't spend their time thinking, you know, that money is actually important. You know, I didn't really focus on the money before. I never even thought it was important. I thought the solution was important. Now I'm learning that marketing is not even the product anymore that's important. It's the way you communicate about the product. So there's a lot of lessons that I had to learn in order to get out. And it was things that, it's a paradigm shift is the best way I would say. I had to have a paradigm shift to get out. And now that I have a paradigm shift, I can offer it to people as a solution to their problems. I hope that makes sense. Still a challenge because it's like I live in a lab and I've got an alternative view, but the rest of the world is still on version 1.0. So how do you, you know?
So you mentioned something interesting, and if you can elaborate a little bit on that, I think the listeners would think that was helpful. So you mentioned to change the question from how to who.
Yes.
Can you just kind of briefly explain what you meant by that?
Okay. So it's part of a bigger conversation, but I'll just simplify it and say all of us, all humans, are basically manifesting intentions. So my intention is to make $1 million. My intention is to get my business off the ground. My intention is to have a great family. Everything that when we say vision or moving forward or hustling, what we're really talking about is bringing intentions into reality. Does that make sense? So once you basically get that, what's really going on with humans or people is we're bringing intentions into reality. And we usually have to get clear on our intention, and that can come out as a vision or a goal or some project, right? That's the intent. Now, when you look at intention, in order to move it from wherever it is in your mind or in your heart into reality, it requires thinking. And thinking is the process of asking questions. There you go. So intentions are brought into reality through thinking. And thinking, most people have never considered, what is thinking, Nigel? thinking is the process of asking questions. Even though, like when people are quiet, they're like, oh, I'm thinking, Nigel. If you examine what's going on in their mind, it's processing a question. Now that we got that, now we can look at the type of questions that the mind is processing. So, and by the way, this is that link between mindsets. So it turns out that there are four, at least in English, the English language, there are four main questions that people are always asking. Why, how, what, who? And that is the hierarchy. Those questions have different speeds of manifestation. Literally, like intention will get to reality faster depending on which question you use to get it there when you're thinking. So the worst one to ask, and I know most people go, you need to know your why, Nigel. What's your why? Right? It turns out there are two types of whys, and most people are using the wrong one. So there's the forward why, like why should we do this? Why should we get on the moon? Why? Because it will advance humanity, because we'll get a better view from the moon to the earth. The why question moving forward, if you think that way, why should we do this? It will propel you. It's a very powerful question. It's not fast, but it's definitely motivational. So the why question is motivation. The wrong why, or the reverse why, I think of why like if you have an anchor swinging over your head, the ship's anchor, and you release it in front of you, it will go way ahead of you and anchor itself in the future, and you can pull on that why. Why am I doing this? Because, Nigel, you need to make a lot of money. Why? Because you're going to be famous. Why? You see, that's the forward why. But if you swirl that anchor over your head and release it behind you, it will go way back and anchor itself, and you're trying to move forward and something is holding you back. Why not? It's called why not. Because of this accident, because this happened, because technology's not working, because I'm afraid. There's a lot of reasons why you cannot do something. The majority of people are using the why not without awareness. They're not aware. So how we know it is they say, because circumstance. Did you hear that? Because it's not a good time. Because I don't have any money. All the why nots, right? And then in sales, they call them objections. And you have to spend all this time fighting all their objections. So one thing you can do with the why question is is to be careful how you ask it. So give me a good reason why you should do this right now. Huh.
Yeah.
You see? And so that's the why. The next one up in terms of power and speed is the how. This is what the masses of people, normal people, love that question. So if you go to the library or personal development, you'll see the number one question that human beings ask is, how do I blah? Okay, I want to start a business. How do I start a business? How do we do this? How do we do that? And so there's a lot of consulting practices that are built around the how question. How to win friends and influence people. How to get rich quick. So the how-to question is actually, as far as a mindset goes, it's a survival question. People only ask that when they're about to die. How am I going to pay the rent today? How are we going to get out of here? You see, it's always triggered by survival. Not a great one. Yeah. So we go, okay, so what, Nigel? So if we can't ask why, well, you can, but it's not good for you. And we can't ask how, well, you can, but it's just going to put your mind in survival. Well, what's left? Well, there are two other questions that you could process with. What? The what question. The what question is a beautiful question because it usually causes the mind to see things. So here's one. Hey, Nigel, what's happening, man? Oh, that's a good question. What's happening? I have to look around and think, oh, yeah, what's going on in my life? It makes you see. So it's a visioning question. It creates clarity. So, and you'll see that in the consulting, I'm sure in your world, that is your favorite question. So what's your objective? What's the plan? What's the strategy? And so it's for professionals, the doctors, the lawyers, the accountants, the ones that spend 7 years thinking about stuff, and you have to pay them in thousands per minute to talk to them. That's my favorite question. What? And as far as cash flow, it creates a linear cash flow. If you think in terms of what, it will produce money at a linear rate. And it will, the more it produces, I have somewhere on my website, there's a correlation between the type of question and the speed of money. All right.
Okay.
So the why question causes it to go negative. The how question causes a flat line, meaning your money, if you ask the how question, your cash flow will remain constant over time. It will not change. It will not get worse. How to people usually have fixed income, right? What people, consultants, doctors, professionals, have their cash flow increases with time. In other words, the longer they spend on it is the more money they make. So hence the billing rate is dollars per hour. It turns out it's a mindset thing. So anyway, the what question causes clarity, it makes things clear, and it's called strategy. So there are people who get paid to know what, and people who get paid to know how. The what people get paid much more than the how people. Architects know what to do, builders know how to do it. Can you hear the difference?
Yes.
So that's how the question plays out in the real world. And if you pay attention to questions now, you'll notice that different professionals are asking, on average, they will spend more time on particular questions other than other questions. So anyway, we just covered the main ones in the business world. Why, how, what. And then I said the one that takes you out of jail, changes the game, puts magic in the space, is my favorite and highly recommended only question, is the who question. And I can tell you this right now, that only about 1% of the population use that question in their life. Like, I mean, if you just check out, you just reflect on your day, right? So far, and ask yourself, did I ask a who question today? See, anyone listening to this, just check. Look, okay, so like today the technology wasn't working, so you probably was asking, like, what's going on, and how are we going to fix this? You see, right?
Yeah.
At least those two questions must have come up today, right? And so as soon as I go in, I never waste any time processing those questions. In fact, one of my biggest projects was at a philanthropy organization a foundation. I got called into a foundation, and they had a little challenge that I was privy to see while they were in there. And it was to do with donors. So they're like, we're noticing that the majority of the donors are wealthy white people, but the majority of the recipients are poor black people. Isn't that weird? And so it's like, wow, we want to change that. How are we going to do that? So they're sitting there, how can we change this? And they're like, what can we do? And this is a leadership meeting that they were in. This is the top people that have run, they control money and where it goes and who gives it. You know what I'm saying? This is a philanthropy organization, right? And I'm sitting in there and I'm watching their brains stressing out, and I'm noticing they never ask a who question. Okay? So I said, okay, can I say something? Yes, Nigel. I think we're asking the wrong question. They're like, what? No, not the what question. We're asking we need to ask a different question. What is this guy talking about? I'm like, okay, let me explain to you. I'm not even going to explain. I'm just going to ask a different question. Who are the wealthy black people in this town? And they're like, well, we don't know. The next question is not how can we find out, but who would know? And it turns out, right? It turns out in the room, there's a guy that does he's a financial advisor to the wealthy black people. And he raised his hand and goes, well, I know. I'm like, done. Now, the question is, then they go, well, yes, they're there, but how are we going to get them to come, and start donating? See, their brain is on default how mode, okay? And I said, the wrong question again. Here's a better question. Who could cause all of them to come out and donate? And the same guy that was the advisor to the Who's, they call the Who's, he said, well, there's one dude, he's the major influencer. In other words, the question is, who is the influencer of the influencers? And a name popped into his mind right away. And I said, well, the question is, who's going to call him? Another name popped into his head. And by the end of the day, we had the name, the person, and somebody called him and we said, listen, we're going to have an event for all the wealthy Black people and we need a cause. Who can come up with a cause? There's a guy in the room that has a cause. We're going to help young Black guys to get into school. We just need a reason for these wealthy guys to give their money. They came out in droves out of work. Why? Because Nigel decided to change the question and the money came exponentially. So that was the best example, because even within these intentions, within a business consulting environment, every entrepreneur, the real measurement of their success is their cash flow, right? Can you see?
Of course.
So the question itself affects cash flow. And that's what I noticed while I was in the wilderness, that the question determines your speed of your money. And the who question brings money into the bank much faster than any other question.
Wow.
There it is.
That's so enlightening. I love that. That's wonderful.
Yes. So this is what I mean by my work. It's that level where we're looking at the internal processing of the mind, as well as the heart, as well as the emotions. That's my work. So it's not easy to communicate all of this stuff that I see in there out in a marketing scenario. So the best thing is to just demonstrate it like we're doing right now. So I really appreciate it that you asked that question, because I got to explain it. Yay. Sorry.
Absolutely. Well, I think that is a perfect time for us to let you discuss just very quickly, kind of, somebody wants to get in contact with you. We're, of course, going to have all of your links on our descriptions. But what would you suggest is the best way for somebody to kind of start working with you?
Well, I realized I have about 3 websites, and they represent the different phases: my how phase, my what phase, and my who phase. So my how phase is called NAH Consulting, and that's what I do for how-to stuff. And my what phase is for, explaining and talking. And I have masteryunleashed.com, Mastery Unleashed. That's the website where people find out what I'm doing. But the who phase, I said, Nigel, you need to be a who, man. So I created my stage name, if you like. What's that word? I created masternigel.com. And
alter ego.
Yeah, well, the thing is, it embodies my philosophy. I believe that all humans are masters, but for some reason that word has been corrupted because of history of slavery and all sorts of stuff that happened to different people. Nobody wants to own it, but yet the masters control all the money. And so I wanted to live up to the highest version of my methodology by putting myself in the uncomfortable position of creating a brand called Master Nigel. So I've created it. That's where most of my work is. And so when people engage with me at masternigel.com, that's when they'll see the application of my work. So if you just go there, you'll see I have a lot of videos that explains it. And I also put out some of this content that I just shared with you on Facebook Live. So if you go to Nigel Henry Facebook or you type Master Nigel in on Facebook, I'll come up and you will see me teaching some of these principles on a whiteboard, on a white wall, and I call it the writings on the wall. And it's my way of communicating it literally from the lab and applying it to business. And basically what I'm really saying is that to the degree that you become the master yourself, where you're known as the master of your industry, like Michael Jordan, the master of basketball, you claim that, then it will activate your identity, and identity trumps know what and know how. And we call it in the regular business is celebrity authority. The who.
Yes.
Whoever has the celebrity power can just walk in and command all the money. So that's what I'm promoting. So you can find all of that heavyweight stuff at masternigel.com.
Wonderful. That's great. I'm sure a lot of our listeners are going to be very interested in connecting and certainly just looking at what you have available.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciated the explanation of the who, what, how. That was fascinating. So I'm sure that everybody found it as interesting as I did. Is there any last bit of advice that you would give an entrepreneur before we sign off?
I would say just an emphasis on be clear on your intentions, like especially the money side of it, and then focus on the who. The who will bring you the relationships. The banks want to know who you are. The customers know who your customers is. Just think in who mode, and a lot of things clear up real fast.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, and we will talk to you next time.
Okay. Thank you, Emily.
Welcome to the podcast, everybody. This is All Hustle, No Luck, and we are sitting down today with an amazing entrepreneur. I'm really excited to hear about his story and what he's up to today. So, Nigel, go ahead and introduce yourself. Let everybody know what your current project is, and then we'll jump in.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name's Nigel Henry. My company's called Mastery Unleashed, and we develop tools, distinctions, and practices that activates people to deliver amazing performance in their business and their personal life. And I've been doing that. I started in 2000 after being in technology for 10 years or 15 years. And then I basically decided I wanted to help people. And now I'm focused on entrepreneurs who are using their business as a vehicle to make a massive impact in the world. So that's my little intro.
Great. So you were in the technologies industry before. What kind of made that transition for you? Was there like a moment that was just like you had to do it? You had to do something different?
It happened at the end of Y2K. Do you remember the big bug?
I do.
That was going to shut down the world. And I was working on a big project for GE Capital, and we basically solved the bug, and it was amazing, best performance ever. And they were so pleased by my performance, they wanted to hire me for their Six Sigma, engagements. And at that time, I kind of just started my little spiritual practices. Well, I've been doing it, but it was getting more significant. And literally, I heard a voice say, Nigel, congratulations, you've fixed the bug in the computer. Now go and fix the bug in the humans. I'm like, oh, okay. And I said yes, because I was interested in helping people. And I was, even in technology, I was migrating towards the people side more than the raw tech side. So it was a natural switch over. But basically, I didn't know what I was getting into. I just thought, well, I'm sure if we could debug humans, we would discover something, and literally discovered that humans are high performance beings, but they're being limited or held back by this weird bug that's interfering with their performance.
Wow.
Yes, that was an answer to a call.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So when you heard this and you knew that this was the direction you were going to go, was it just like full steam ahead, or was it scary, or what was that like?
At the time, I didn't just end my technology work. I was still doing consulting, and so I was already an independent contractor, so I was still had sort of one foot in the tech world. and this other foot exploring the people side of things. And this is back in 2000. I think the